We continue now at the top of Daf Samech Gimel Amid Beis in Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 63b. On the previous Amid, the Gemara asked if you have a situation of a Nazir who finds out about the Tumah after the end of the term of his Nazirus, but the Tumah itself took place during the term of the Nazirus. So what do we follow? Do we follow the time when the Tumah actually occurred, or do we follow the time when he found out about the Tumah? And the Gemara now says, Amar Rava says, Tashma, come in here the following proof from our Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Imad shelo gilach, bein kach uvein kach soser. The Mishnah said, let's say he found out about the Tumah before he shaved, so then it doesn't matter what kind of Tumah it was. It doesn't matter if it was regular Tumah or if it was Tumas to home, it was Tumah of the depths. In both cases, it's going to undo his count. And the Gemara now says, Hey Chidami, what exactly is the case in this Mishnah? Id is yadale besoch malos. Now, if it means over here that he found out about the Tumah and it was still during the term of the Nazirus, so tzricha l'meimer, would that even need to be said? Of course, in that situation, it's going to undo his count of Nazirus. Elalav, rather, is it not la'achar malos? It's talking about the situation where he found out after the actual term. And the Gemara says, Shma mina. So you see from here that it is soser, even though he found out after. But again, since the Tumah took place during the term, apparently it undoes the Nazirus. But the Gemara says still that's not clear. But still, even in that part of the Mishnah itself, we have a question. Kulo soser or shiva soser? We don't know what the Mishnah is saying. Is it saying that it undoes the entire Nazirus, or is it saying that he only needs to do an additional 7 days? Because again, according to Rabbi Eliezer, if the person becomes tamei at the end of the term, after the term, so then it's just 7 days. And so still, we really don't know what the Mishnah is saying. Are we following the time when he found out about the Tumah and it's just 7 days? Or do we mean to say that since the Tumah occurred earlier, so therefore it undoes the entire count? And the Gemara now says, Laman, well, who are we going according to? Ilaim al Rabbanan. So if we're going according to the Rabbanan, Pshita Dekulo Soser, there's no question anyway, because they hold even at the end of the term, it undoes everything. So there's nothing to discuss when we're following the Shita of the Rabbanan. V'il Rabbi Eliezer, but if we're following Rabbi Eliezer, and we said in the previous Amud that the Mishnah does follow Rabbi Eliezer, so Kol Achar Malos Shiva Soser, so the halacha is, in general, if it happens after the term, it should only be 7 days. But the Gemara clarifies, Amar Lach, now he'll say to you as follows, Hani Mili Kinitma Achar Malos. Maybe that's only true when the actual occurrence of Tumah happens after the term. V'hailif Neimalosu, and here the Tumah happened before the term was complete. Odil Mashani Hachad Yadia Achar Malosi, or maybe no, it's different here because he found out about the Tumah after the term, which essentially is a restatement of our original question. And the Gemara now concludes and answers the question and says, Umina Katani, Bein Kach Uvein Kach Soser. We actually can understand the answer from the Mishnah itself, because it says, in all situations, it's going to undo velo kamiflagi. And the Mishnah doesn't make a distinction. The Mishnah doesn't make a distinction between if the Tumah itself happened after the term, or if the Tumah happened before the term. And so therefore it seems that we actually do follow the point in time when he found out about the Tumah, which was at the end of the term, and that's why it's only going to be 7 days. And as we mentioned on the previous Amud, this is difficult because the simple reading of the Mishnah, it sounds like we actually do follow when the Tumah itself occurred, and the Mefarshim do discuss that issue. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Hamotze meis mutal rechava shel derech. Let's say he finds a corpse across the width of the road. L'truma tamei uvenazir uvaosa pesach tar. So with regards to the halachas of truma, he's considered tamei, but with regards to the halachas of nazir and korban pesach, he's considered tahar. And again, that is the leniency of tumas hatahom. When is this true? That's if there's no area to pass where the person won't become tamei. But if he has an area where he could have passed through and not become tamei, so afla truma tar, then we're going to say even by truma his tar, he is tahar, we will be lenient even by truma. Now when is all of this true? It's only if the corpse is whole. But if the corpse is broken, or if it's dismembered, or even if there's no area to pass, we suspect that maybe he went through the areas where there is no tumah, the areas where it was broken, and therefore he is tahar. However, if you're talking about a grave, even if it's broken or if it's dismembered, still he is tamei, because the halacha is that the grave site, it makes it all like one unit, and so therefore again he is tamei. When is all of this true? That's just if he's walking walking on his feet. But let's say he's carrying a load, or let's say he's riding, so then he's tamei. And the reason is because somebody who's walking regular, it's possible that he won't touch it, that he won't move it, that he won't become an ohel over the tumah. He's able to walk in a clear, straight path. But if he has a load, or rachav, or he's riding, he's certainly not going to go in a straight path. It's impossible that he won't either touch or move or become an ohel over the tumah. And the Gemara continues by Meddevarim Amurim, and when is this true? But Tumas HaTahom, it's only true, like we said, by Tumas HaTahom, Aval Tumah Yedua, but let's say it's a known Tumah, so then Shloshtan Tameim, so then in all three situations, we are going to rule Tameh, meaning to say, by Truma, by Nazir, and by Korban Pesach, we're going to say Tameh. Ve'ezu hi Tumas HaTahom, and what is considered Tumas HaTahom? Kol she'ein makira echad b'sofa olam, it is Tumah that nobody in the world is aware of. Makira echad b'sofa olam, but if somebody in the world is aware of this Tumah, ein zu Tumas HaTahom, that is not called Tumas HaTahom. Hayatamun b'tevin o b'tzroros, harezu Tumas HaTahom. If the mace, if the corpse is buried under straw or pebbles, that's called Tumas HaTahom. B'yamin, but if it's in water, uva'afel, or it's in darkness, uvenikike asloim, or in the clefts of the rocks, ein zu Tumas HaTahom, that's not considered Tumas HaTahom, because that's something that eventually will be discovered. V'lo amru Tumas HaTahom, and finally, the Gemara says we don't use the leniency of Tumas HaTahom, ela l'meis bilvad, only when it comes to Tumas Meis, not by other kinds of Tumah. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Ketzad yard, how so? Let's say the person descends into a cave, and there's Tumah that is floating at the mouth of the cave. And the Gemara says, it's suf in a case of floating Tumah, floating corpse, Eina metamel inyan sheretz. That's not going to cause Tumah in a situation where it's a sheretz. That halacha only applies by a corpse and not by a sheretz. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, suffik Tumah, let's say you have a situation of suffik Tumah, tzaf and it's floating, bein bekalim, bein bekarka, whether it's floating in water that's in kalim, or whether it's water that is in the ground, tahora, it is going to be pure. Rabbi Shimon says, bekalim tamei, if it's in kalim, if the water's in vessels and it's floating in that water, it's tamei, bekarka, tahora, but if it's in the ground, the water's in the ground, so then we are going to say that it is tahor. And Rashi says, Hachi Garsinan Safa Eina Metamel in Sheretz, by the floating Tumah, that does not apply to Tumas Sheretz. Kilomar, what we mean is as follows. Afal Gav, the Tumas Meis Safa Metame Besafik Maga. Even though if you have Tumas Meis that's floating, and you have a suffix whether you touch that Tumah, we say it's Tameh. Kedetanan, like we said in the Mishnah of Nimsa Meis Safa Al Pnei Hamayim, you have a mace, a corpse that's floating on the water. Even though we are strict in that situation, Linyan Sheretz, Mia Eina Chashuva L'Tamei Misafik. If the situation is Tumas Sheretz, that is not considered substantial enough to say that he's Tamei in a situation of doubt. Shem Sheretz Tzaf Al Pnei Hamayim, Safik Nagabo, Safik Lo Nagabo. If you have a sheretz that's floating on the water and it's a doubt whether he touched it or not, sveiko tar. In that case, we're going to say that in that situation of doubt, it is tahor. The Tanya is learned in a brisa, safik tumat safik kolomar, tumat safik v'hu safik im nagabo im lo nagabo. Again, the case is you have tumah and it's floating and you don't know it's a safik whether he touched it or not. Bein sheet safik b'mayim shebekalim, whether it's floating in water that's in vessels. Bein b'mayim shebekarka, whether it's water that is in the earth. Tahor, it is going to be pure. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Dalid Amud Aleph.